Jay here, Stretford, Paddock. This is Gazzetta. I'm standing in for Adam McCullough, who's busy, hopefully, winning loads of money at poker. We'll get straight into it. Loads of stories to get through around Manchester United. Very few of them positive, as usual. It just feels a bit doom and gloom at the minute. Talking of doom and gloom, the weather here in Salford isn't so sunny. It's just started raining. So, yeah, it's a bit miserable. But anyway, we'll try and find some good news in this pile of rubbish that is Manchester United news at the minute. But don't hold your breath. First of all, this is from the Eye. Now, it's not actually a Sunday paper. It's a Saturday and Sunday paper. But it's worth referencing anyway, because A, we didn't do a news yesterday. We was doing the transfer review, obviously, with Stay, and B, because it's got a Manchester United story on the back page, and it isn't a good one, as you can see there. Pressure builds on United to suspend Antony. Brazilian winger denies allegations of assault brought by two more women. Now, Antony's given an interview, I think, where he's denied these allegations. Two more women have come forward and obviously said that they've accused him of various things. He's already had the allegation, I think, from his ex-partner, who's given a statement and an interview as well, I believe. So there is a little bit of pressure on the club, as you can imagine, following these allegations. Now, he's denying it. As it stands at the minute, he hasn't been charged with anything. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. It feels as though if this continues, if there's more momentum to it, the club may have to act. The club released a statement just saying that they were basically aware of what was going on and more or less saying they weren't going to do anything about it, to be honest with you. That might change. You suspect if anything develops, whether he gets charged, whether there's more allegations. I don't know. And I don't want to speculate when it's something like this. I just want to stick to what we know at the minute. We know that people have come forward. We know that the club have issued this statement, which pretty much said nothing. And we know that Antony's denying the allegations. So when there are any developments, as always, we'll keep you posted. Just off the back of the Mason Greenwood situation, for want of a better word, you'd hope the club will learn some lessons from that and just learn how to sort of act. Because whilst I think the club did some things right in how they handled Mason Greenwood, I think, especially towards the end, they did a lot of things wrong. So hopefully we can have some sort of answers and developments on this and find out what's happening, and the club can do the right thing, whichever that may be. But at the minute, he's still a Manchester United player who's eligible and not playing for the club. He's not been suspended. I know Brazil have obviously dropped him from the Brazilian squad after these allegations. We'll wait and see what happens with Manchester United. This was in the Mail on Sunday, and this is from Raif Al-Samari. If I'm pronouncing that one, forgive me. He says here, after years of apathy by the Glazers, it's still staggering how it can cost that much for United to look that cheap. Now, I read this article. It makes some points that you go, okay, it's like, we've heard it a few times. I think he references Simon Jordan on TalkSport saying you can't blame the Glazers for everything. It's not the Glazers' fault that everything that's gone wrong at Manchester United. Now, there are certain things where you go, okay, is that down to the Glazers? And I'm not saying every single thing where you go, you always point the finger at the Glazers. But they're at the top. And a lot of this, if not all, pretty much all of it, even though I just said I'm all blaming for everything, comes from the top down. And when you've got, and he uses the word apathy towards the club by the owners, then that is going to seep through to the very fabric of the club. And that is what we've seen after 18 years or during these 18 years of Glazer ownership. And he says here, there will always be a temptation in these discussions to tie the Glazers to the wild sums of money they have bled out of the club in interest payments. And as football fans, we can loathe them for that. But the problem with the Glazers is less about the cash flow and more what they represent with their apathy and the culture it creates. There is a culture of apathy at Manchester United. There's a culture of mismanagement. There's a culture of just chaos a lot of the time. And that comes from the Glazers. You look at the last 18 years, especially post Sir Alex Ferguson, even pre that, some of the times under Sir Alex, when we could have gone a bit further in the transfer market, we could have made better decisions if we'd have backed the manager a little bit more. Now, he will said there's no value in the market or whatever. I'm not so sure. And that would have stopped the juggernaut that became Manchester City. Now you look at it post Sir Alex Ferguson, and it's been more or less a disaster. And the Glazers have to take responsibility for that. They should. I mean, everything from the women's team, you've got issues there. I think the latest one was Mary Earps is ready to leave. I mean, the women's players aren't getting paid the same as what they get paid elsewhere. We already lost Casey Stone, didn't we, a couple of years ago because the facilities weren't right. You look at the football stadium, it's falling apart, basically. I love Old Trafford, but let's be honest, it is. The training facilities, which were state of the art when he took over in 2005, I think they were new in 2000. You haven't barely been touched since. It's just chopping down trees and putting up cameras and taking out cameras. That's not developing your training ground. We should have better training facilities. We should have a better stadium. We should have a transfer policy that makes sense. That isn't just let's back a manager for a bit, throw a load of money at him, and then stop backing him to the point where when you do finish second in the league, as Jose Mourinho did behind Manchester City, 19 points behind him, your answer to that is to go out and buy Diogo Dalot, Fred, and a third choice goalkeeper. It never makes any sense at Manchester United. And I think a big part of that, if not all of it, is down to the Glazers. So I'm glad at least we're having this discussion in the mainstream media. I don't agree with everything that's being said, but I want the discussions to keep continuing, especially with the latest news or the news we had the other week that they might not be selling and they might be taking the club off the market. We have to keep discussing the Glazers, criticising the Glazers, protesting about the Glazers, and calling for the Glazers to leave. Because I was going to say calling for the Glazers to sort it out, but I think that ship sailed now. I don't think they can sort it out. I think the only option really is if they move on. This is in the Mirror, the Sunday Mirror. You see that? Sancho row stuns Ten Hag. This is obviously the fallout still about Jadon Sancho and Erik Ten Hag. Erik Ten Hag said after the Arsenal game that Jadon Sancho wasn't available because of his performances basically in training. I'm paraphrasing there. Jadon Sancho then did a Twitter post denying what the manager said or pushing back on what the manager said, saying that he'd been giving his all in training. It's just all getting a bit messy. It says here, this is by Simon Mullock, Erik Ten Hag has been shocked at how his row with Jadon Sancho has escalated. The United boss left the winger out the trip to Arsenal as he felt that his £73 million man needed to be reminded of his duties after allowing his performances in training to slip. Sources close to Ten Hag claim that he hoped Sancho's omission and the subsequent explanation of the decision will lay down a challenge to the 23-year-old that would be accepted. So the Dutchman was dismayed when Sancho responded, by posting a rebuttal on his X. So it's not Twitter anymore, it's X, is it? X account, claiming he was being made a scapegoat for United's inconsistent start to the season. Yeah, and it goes on to say, I mean, obviously we had this story as well doing the rounds about he wasn't given permission or whatever it was to speak about Jadon Sancho's mental health. Joe talked about that on Friday, and I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think if you look at the words Erik Ten Hag did, when he spoke about Jadon Sancho when he was absent last season, I don't think that was crossing a line. I also think Erik Ten Hag has been very, very understanding and supportive towards Jadon Sancho. He's tried his best to get the best out of Jadon Sancho, and it just hasn't worked. And it hasn't worked this season. What we've seen from Jadon Sancho, he didn't play in the Arsenal game. And the games he has played, he's done nothing. And I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like we're edging towards the end game for Jadon Sancho. There were reports as well that Borussia Dortmund, there's a few stories doing the round this morning as well. Borussia Dortmund are interested in him. That could be a way out for Jadon Sancho. Obviously not till January, but he could go back to Dortmund where he played his best football. Maybe that's best all around. And United will take a hit. We're not going to get the 73 million quid we paid for him. But if we get something for him and he can go get his career going and United can move on, maybe that is for the best. And it pains me to say that because I was excited when we signed Jadon Sancho and there is a player there, but it's just not happening. Just on the back of that as well, in the evening news, it says here, Victor Lindelof says, we're United. Victor Lindelof insists that United squad remain calm about the public disagreement between boss Erik Ten Hag and teammate Jadon Sancho over training levels. The Sweden captain, speaking ahead of his country's Euro 2024 qualifier with Estonia, described the dressing room as tight, claiming there is still positive feeling around the club, given the poor start to the season. You shouldn't have these sort of stories. You shouldn't have to deal with this fallout. We had it last season with Cristiano Ronaldo. Now I've got it with Jadon Sancho, who hasn't set the world alight, let's be honest, since he arrived at Old Trafford. I think he needs to pull his socks up and start performing on the pitch. Never mind posting things on Twitter and pushing back on the manager. He was pretty beige, I think, when he said about his training thing. It wasn't like he proper went on him Jose Mourinho style, both barrels. It was just like he could do better in training, more or less. And Jadon Sancho was pushed back on it with this tweet that's still is pinned on his account from last time I checked anyway. And yeah, I just think it's causing more trouble than it's worth. And I'm sorry to say that because I had a lot of time for Jadon Sancho. And I think he's a decent kid. I just think he's misguided. And I don't think he's been good enough for Manchester United Football Club. If you disagree, get involved in the comments and let me know. Normally, I wouldn't give this the time of day. But I'm just going to speak about it briefly and then we'll move on. This is in the Express. It says, it's a red devil of a waste. Graham Souness, this is why I wouldn't normally give it the time of day. Graham Souness is the pundit and the person that, I think it was Dave on it, the rapper, who called him a dusty baller, was it? Oh, Nobody remembers a dusty baller like Graham Souness. He was a decent player, Graham Souness. I don't think he's a very good pundit. In fact, I think he's atrocious. It says Graham Souness is adamant that Manchester United have wasted cash this summer despite a 183.5 million transfer spree. Erik Ten Hag stutter inside and lost 2 of their opening 4 games. And he goes on to say they've spent 72 million on a young centre forward in Rasmus Højlund, who has not got a great goal scoring record. He played 34 times for Atlanta and only hit the back of the net 10 times. I don't think them figures are right. Now he's come to a league where it's really tough to get goals. I might be wrong, but that's one hell of a gamble for someone without a proven track record. The other signings we've made, goes on to talk about them. Mason Mount, Andre Onana, Højlund, Altay Bayande, Sergio Reguilon, Johnny Evans, Sofian Amrabat. They make sense to me. Maybe Johnny Evans, you go, why are we signing Johnny Evans? He's 35 years old or whatever. But okay, a 1-year deal for a player that's been in the club, even that you can argue there's a reason behind it. Sergio Reguilon is coming in because we've got 2 left backs who are out. Sofian Amrabat makes sense. We've all been crying out for this type of midfielder. He looks like the right answer to that one. Højlund, yes, he's young, and I would have liked to have seen another striker with more experience come in alongside him. Was never going to happen. But maybe that's the gamble United had to take. Maybe had to take a punt on a younger player. And also, it's far too soon to throw him under the bus and say he's not good enough or whatever when he's only played about 25 minutes for Manchester United. Plus, Andre Onana, we need a new goalkeeper. Where's David De Gea playing at the minute? Has anyone come in for him? He's still a free agent. It's not like people are knocking his door down to get him in. Why? Because he's not been good enough. He's not been that great for the last few years. We need to stop burying our end of the sand when it comes to Manchester United. So Graham Souness, who's going on about, we spent 183 million. Do you honestly think we're going to get anywhere near Manchester City, who've just won the treble, albeit with 115 charges hanging over him, if we don't spend around 200 million quid at least in every window? Seriously. We should be spending that again in January. That might sound OTT, but we're not going to catch City unless we spend big. So Graham Souness can just wind it in. He's just a typical bitter ex-Scouts pundit who's just got now better to do than moan about Manchester United. Anyway, enough moaning about Manchester United. I'll be back in the morning outside Old Trafford with the paper talk there. Don't forget, if you're not doing already, to hit like, share, and subscribe. This has been Gazzetta from my kitchen. Thanks for watching.